Dear students, now this is the fourth class consecutively taking place in your renal physiology system, and today we shall start discussing the filtrate processing. Till now, I discussed about the broad introduction, gross structure of the kidney, the issue of nephron, and also the function of glomerulus in the form of glomerular filtration. So at this point of time, a large amount of filtrate is formed, around 180 liters of filtrate is formed per day, and that 180 liters of filtrate will now be processed to ultimately form around 1 to 2 liters of urine. So how this filtrate is processed to form urine, that will be the point of discussions for next few classes. So as you all know that this processing of glomerular filtrate is taking place in the tubule. It is a renal tubule where the processing of filtrate is taking place. So this is called tubular processing of glomerular filtrate, whereby finally the micturating urine is formed. So with this a few words, let me start presenting the slides which I prepared for a easy and lucid understanding of this very complex portion of renal physiology. I would ask you to go through this class very attentively, take down your notes and frame your question, as you will be supplied with a video form which you can download, or which you can directly see from YouTube platform. So you can have a repeated probability of repeated visualization. So take down notes and frame your question. I am here to answer each of your questions. So let me now share my screen and give my presentation. So as my screen is shared, so this is the term physiology of renal tubule. Now at the outset, I will dedicate this lecture to the thousands of zebrafish. This is zebra danio, zebrafish, on which major or a substantial amount of experimental activities were taking place with respect to the understanding of tubular physiology. This zebra danio is a very popular fish used in aquarium setting, household aquarium setting, having a long tubule, very few in number, very long tubule, very few in number, and in a transparent background. So using various substances, using various colored substances, the pattern or phenomena of tubular transport or phenomena of membrane transport across these tubules were studied. And so this lecture is a dedication of hundreds of zebrafish or zebra danio who dedicated their life for human understanding of this complex tubular physiology. Now, nephron function, if we recapitulate a bit, nephron function are of several types. One is filtration, another is transport. Filtration we have covered, and we are undertaking the discussion on transport. So if we try to understand the physiologic anatomy of transport instrument, so this is the classical picture of nephron, and let me show you, or let me locate you different territorial locations where transport is taking place. So this is glomerulus or Malpighian corpuscle, and this is the long tubular system. This is the long tubular system. Now, what are the parts? This is the proximal tubule or proximal convoluted tubule, or we should say proximal tubule, because proximal tubule has got several parts, in which proximal convoluted tubule, proximal straight tubule, these are there. Next is the descending limb of loop of Henle, followed by the hairpin bend and ascending limb of loop of Henle. This is followed by distal convoluted tubule. This is followed by connecting tubule, and this is followed by several portions of collecting tubule. Cortical portion, see, there is cortical portion, outer medullary portion, and inner medullary portion. So this is the various parts of tubule, and obviously this nephron is oriented corticomedullary orientation, about which I have detailed in a reasonable detail in our past lectures. So this is the various locations, territorial locations of tubular system. If we a bit recap the nephron function, which we discussed in my earlier classes. So this is the glomerulus or the vascular component of the tubule, and in this violet color, this is the tubular system or epithelial component of the nephron. So this is the endothelial component of the nephron, and this is the epithelial component of the nephron, and this is the junction is the glomerular filtration barrier, about which I discussed in detail. The filtration, so this is afferent arteriole, this is efferent arteriole, and filtration is taking place across the filtration barrier into the Bowman's capsule, followed by tubular processing or tubular transport. So this glomerular filtration will be followed by tubular transport, either tubular secretion, transport into the lumen, transport inside the lumen, or transport away from the lumen, transport away from the lumen. Transport into the lumen means tubular secretion, transport away from the lumen means tubular reabsorption, and this is known as transport. And finally, formation of urine. So there are several attributes. One is pH-GFR or filtered load of a substance X. Next is Tx or the transport of a substance X per unit time. And finally is UXV, that is the urinary load of a substance per unit time. So pH-GFR is the filtered load of a substance per unit time. Tx is the transport of that substance per unit time, and UXV is the urinary load of a substance X per unit time. So this is I discussed earlier. So this is the Nephron equation. UXV is equal to PXGFR plus minus TX. If TX is plus, it is secretion. If TX is minus, it is absorption. So we are dealing with TX. Here we are dealing with TX. This class is for TX. So this class is a kind of an introduction or rather a principle of tubular processing or tubular function. So let me give you certain examples of tubular function, or what I have discussed till now, certain examples of those. So first of all, so this is the Nephron equation. I have told you plenty of times. GFR, PX GFR plus minus TX is equal to XV. So let us give you the first example. This is an example where amount which is filtered, that is PX GFR, and that amount is excreted, that is UXV, where there is no transport, nil transport. The substance is neither reabsorbed nor filtered. So TX is 0. TX is 0. So PX GFR is equal to UXV. And such an example is inulin. Such an example is inulin. I told you earlier also. So inulin is a substance which is only filtered, neither reabsorbed nor secreted, remain as such. There is no tubular processing of inulin, no tubular processing of inulin, and inulin is excreted as such. So PXGFR is equal to UXV, right? So this is the first example where there is no tubular processing. Next, let us see where there is very high level of tubular processing. See here, whatever amount is filtered is totally reabsorbed. Whatever amount of substance is filtered is totally reabsorbed. So amount of substance filtered, that is PXGFR, and TX is same. Whatever amount of filtered, total is reabsorbed. We can say TX is total, and again the urinary load is 0. Nothing is excreted. Nothing is excreted. There is a total reabsorption. Total amount of filtrate is processed and reabsorbed or removed, and nothing is excreted. Such an example is glucose. And third one, where TX is positive. So for glucose, it is negative because it is reabsorbed. And for another substance known as PAH, para-aminohipurate or para-aminohipuric acid, which is a substance which is classically secreted. So amount which is filtered and amount which is secreted, they are added, leading to amount which is excreted. So here excretory amount is greater than the filtered load. Excretory amount is greater than the filtered load because it is added upon by the tubular addition or secretory amount, and that is an example of PAH. Here also there is extremely high level of tubular processing, but here it is adding, it is an addition of substance. So these are the three classical examples of tubular processing. Now, to understand this complex mechanism of tubular processing, I would try to understand now the physiologic anatomy of tubule. Now, I would like to tell you that tubule is not a uniform homogeneous structure. It is rather a variable structure. It is rather a variable structure there are locational variation, there are territorial variation, there are different parts of nephron, different parts of tubule which are anatomically and physiologically different. So let us try to understand that. So if you see that classical picture of a nephron, this is the resin cast followed by the scanning electron microscope, what I have shown you earlier, to impress upon you about the glomerulus. The same picture I am using to impress upon you about the gross structure of tubule. See, this is the glomerulus and these are the tubule. If I magnify it, especially at the tubular level, see, tubules are a kind of branches of tree and which are carrying the filtrate produced at the level of glomerulus. Now it is not only carrying the filtrate, it is also processing the filtrate. So I will time and again show you this picture of nephron function, and this is PXGFR, this is UXV, and I have already shown the PX. Now let us try to understand the functional localization. Now, in order to understand the functional localization, we shall again see the picture of nephron. So let us take up one by one. This is a very, very important picture. First is proximal tubule. See the proximal tubule. If you carefully see the microscopic anatomy of the proximal tubule, you will see this proximal tubule has got several features. There are plenty of villus. There are plenty of villus, innumerable villi, villi and microvilli, very big or substantially big nucleus, and also plenty of mitochondria. See, plenty of mitochondria. So a moderate sized nucleus, plenty of mitochondria, and lot of villi and microvilli. What does it signify? This signifies that as there is plenty of villi, so the available surface area of this proximal tubular epithelium must be very, very high. The available surface area of this proximal tubular epithelium must be very, very high. So there must be a very large amount of transport, because we all know that membrane transport is directly proportional to the available surface area as per Fick's law. Membrane transport is directly proportional to the available surface area. So as there is plenty of villi and microvilli leading to amplification of the available surface area, there must be a large amount of solute transport or solvent transport, solute or solvent transport or molecular transport in the proximal tubule. Another thing we see, there is good moderate sized nucleus. That means these cells are very active metabolically, and this plenty of nuclei indicates that it is involved in some energy yielding process, some process which require large amount of energy consumption, energy consuming activity. That means there must be a lot of active transport is taking place here. So this is a kind of a structure function correlation. If we see the molecular detail or the microscopic detail of proximal convoluted tubule, we shall see that it is the zone where large amount of transport is taking place, probably utilizing certain energy consuming process or energy yielding process. That means probably utilizing some active transport mechanism. Now, next if we see the descending limb of loop of Henle, after proximal tubule, there is descending limb of loop of Henle. You will very clearly see that Here, the epithelium is very thin, very, very thin. In case of proximal tubule, epithelium is quite thick, almost cuboidal epithelium. Whereas in case of descending limb of group of Henle, it is very thin and a flattened epithelium. Hardly there is any mitochondria. Nuclear size also quite small. All these things indicate that it is perfectly suitable of some kind of passive transport, or passive diffusion of solute or osmosis, whatever it is. So either passive diffusion of solutes or osmosis of solvents, etc. So this is the thing what we see in case of descending limb of group of Henle. The structure correlates with function. Now similar picture we also see in the thin ascending limb. Similar picture we also see in case of thin ascending limb. Next part is known as thick ascending limb. This part is known as thick ascending limb. And in thick ascending limb, we see almost a similar picture of proximal tubule, except the number of villi and microvilli are much less. Number of villi and microvilli are much less. Similar picture we also see in case of distal tubule. See, in case of distal tubule. In thick ascending limb and distal tubule, the picture is like that. Very large nucleus, plenty of mitochondria, cuboidal epithelium, but number of villus or number of area of surface area sorry area of surface area is not that amplified. So all these things indicate that there must be some active transport mechanism is involved in thick ascending limb and distal convoluted tubule. But the absolute amount or total amount of molecular transport is not that high as compared to the proximal tubule. Right? As compared to proximal tubule, the amount of transport is not that high, but all these transports must be some kind of active transport. Now, if we pass on to the collecting duct, we shall see there is less amount of mitochondria. The villus amplification is also very low. So all these things are indicating that some kind of passive kind of transport is taking place here. Passive kind of transport of moderate amount is taking place here. So this is a brief description with respect to structure function correlation in different territorial jurisdiction, territorial location of tubular system. Now, if we now see what is actually there, the scanning electron microscope. I am showing you a portion of this portion of Bauman's capsule, and which is culminating into proximal tubule. So this is Bauman's capsule having a kind of flattened epithelium, followed by proximal tubule, and there is abrupt onset of villus. You see in proximal tubule, there is abrupt onset of villus. So this dark are the proximal tubule, starting point of the proximal tubule. So this is Bauman's capsule, and starting point of proximal tubule is a photograph from the scanning electron microscope. Now, if you see it more carefully, this is again photograph from the other way, from the descending limb, early descending limb of group of Henle. From early descending limb of group of Henle, you will see this is the Bauman's capsule. This is the Bauman's capsule. This portion is the proximal tubule. See, this is Bauman's capsule, flattened epithelium. This is proximal tubule having plenty of villus, innumerable villi, followed by descending limb of group of Henle. There is abrupt transition. See, there is abrupt transition of villus epithelium leading and followed by a flattened epithelium. This abrupt transition, you can very clearly see the abrupt transition from high villus populated epithelium followed by the flattened epithelium. So if we magnify it further, you can very clearly see this abrupt transition. This can be also seen. See, this is the microscopic picture, ordinary microscopic picture of proximal tubule, various segments of proximal tubule. You can very clearly see plenty of mitochondria, very big nuclei, and innumerable villi. It is a high magnification, or rather, it is a transmission electron microscope. High magnification. This is one portion of PT, proximal tubule. This is another portion of proximal tubule. But the pictures are almost same. Innumerable villi, plenty of mitochondria, and a very big sized active nuclei, and a thick cuboidal epithelium. So this is a cross section. This is a cross section in ordinary microscope, rather a oblique cross section. As it is an oblique section, a portion of the section, a portion of the circumference of the section is within the proximal tubule, and another portion is in the descending limb of Leucophilus. So this portion, so it is an oblique section at the junction of proximal tubule and descending limb. Then you can see the abrupt transition. Very beautiful picture. So this is the villus indicating the portion of the proximal tubule, and this is the descending limb indicating the portion of the descending limb of Leucophilus. Flattened epithelium. This is a very thick epithelium. See, thick, plenty of mitochondria. This is a very thin epithelium, hardly any mitochondria, and the flattened epithelium. This is an oblique section taken at the junction of proximal tubule and descending limb, where these two pictures are very clearly seen. Very beautiful picture. And if we magnify this, we can very clearly see that. This is again a scanning electron microscope showing you the abrupt transition from proximal tubular epithelium to descending limb of Leucophilus. And this is the magnified part. Now this is a portion again of transmission electron microscope of the thick ascending limb of Leucophilus. See the thick epithelium. This is a thick epithelium. Very big nuclei, good amount of mitochondria, but villus amplification is not much. So this is the picture of thick ascending limb, which is also called tail, T-A-L, tail, thick ascending limb of Leucophilus, and followed by, so again this is also portion of thick ascending limb of Leucophilus. So we show you some of the pictures, actual pictures, or the structural features of the tubular lumen, or various locations of tubular lumen. Next, we try to understand the general functional characteristics to understand the principle of tubular function. Now we start with Nephron equation. UXV is equal to PXGFR plus minus TX. Now UXV means concentration of X in urine. That means milligram per ml, mass per volume, milligram per ml, multiplied by V. V means volume of urine per unit time. That means multiplied by ml per minute. So milligram per ml, that means concentration, multiplied by ml per minute, that means volume per unit time. And this is equal to PXGFR. PX means concentration of X in plasma. Again, concentration, milligram per ml, multiplied by GFR means amount of filtration, volume of filtration per unit time. So this is again ml per minute. Plus minus TX means transport of substance per unit time is again milligram per minute. Right? So this is the unitary aspect. So if you just simplify it, this portion and this portion, and both of them will give rise to milligram per minute, milligram per minute. So this is milligram per minute equal to milligram per minute. So this is a unit aspect. You may wonder that why I am telling these very elementary things, school level. But again, this is very important. When we come to the subsequent discussion, even this simple elementary thing can play havoc in understanding of tubular function. So, nephron equation I have shown you for any substance X. Now, let us rewrite this nephron equation. Let us rewrite this nephron equation for specific for glucose. So UX, instead of UXV, we write UGV. Instead of PXGFR, we write PGGFR. In case of plus minus TX, we write minus PG, because glucose is a substance which is classically reabsorbed. So this is PGGFR, this is the filtered load of glucose, and this is PG, is the transport of glucose. And ordinarily they are equal. So the urinary load of glucose is 0. Urinary presence of glucose is usually 0, because whatever glucose is filtered is as a whole is reabsorbed or transported out of the lumen. So UGV is ordinarily 0. So our aim is to understand the PG as a classical candidate substance. Glucose, we shall try to understand the tubular handling of glucose, how the glucose is handled or processed in the tubule as a candidate substance to understand the reabsorption of glucose. Now, to understand that, we need to understand or a bit recapitulation of the carrier mediated transport. So this is a simple diffusion. So when the X or concentration of X is increasing, the rate of transport is increasing linearly. So when the concentration of X or the concentration gradient of X, rather dCdx, or concentration gradient of X is increasing, the rate of transport is increasing. It is simple diffusion. In case of carrier mediated transport, you can very clearly see when the rate of X is increasing, the Jx is also increasing, but it is not a linear increase, it is rather a non-linear increase. First of all, the rate of rise is quite high because it is a facilitated diffusion or facilitated transport or carrier mediated transport. And after some time, you shall see a phenomena of saturation. When all the carriers present in that particular material point of time get saturated by the transporting solute. So it will exhibit the phenomena of saturation. So carrier mediated diffusion is highly specific and it undergoes saturation. So this is a typical picture of a carrier mediated transport. Now to understand that, we classically use a set of curves known as glucose titration curves. These complex curves I can show you at a time, but I understand that it will be difficult for you to comprehend. So I will again return to my classical chalkboard technique as adopted in computer. I will use a paint platform to draw in my actual hand. All these glucose titration curves. So these are known as glucose titration curves. So if we draw these curves, if we draw these cards, so let us draw this glucose titration card. So I am drawing a frame of reference of graph. So x-axis and y-axis. Obviously, in the x-axis, we shall draw the plasma glucose. In x-axis, we shall draw the plasma glucose. We shall put the plasma glucose. In x-axis, we shall let us a bit enlarge it. In x-axis, we shall put plasma glucose. So x-axis is plasma glucose, and in y-axis there are three attributes of nephron function. Three attributes of nephron function. Let us write one by one. First of all, there will be PG GFR. First of all, there will be PGGFR. That is one attribute. Next attribute is TG, and last attribute is say UG. So these are the three attributes which will consecutively examined one after another, which we shall consecutively examine one after another. So first, let us take up the role of PGGFR. So as the plasma glucose is increasing, say in the afferent arteriolar blood or in plasma, as a whole plasma, as plasma glucose is increasing, what will happen to PGGFR? Very simple. When the plasma glucose will increase, it will also increase. So if plasma glucose increases, this will also increase. So when plasma glucose will increase, this will also increase. With the increase in plasma glucose, the filtered load will increase. Simple. So as PG is increasing, PGGFR is increasing. So it is linear in nature. Now let us see what happens to TG. So when PGGFR is increased, at the same time TG is also increased. PG will also increase till PG will also increase till as the PGGFR increases, TG will also increase. So TG will also increase. Similarly, till it reaches the saturation, and at the point of saturation, it gets saturated, or it will reach a saturation. So that is the picture of TG. So with the rise in filtered load, the transport of glucose or reabsorption of glucose will also linearly rise till the point of saturation will be reached. Then it will undergo plateau. Now let us see what about the UGV, or urinary load of the glucose. Now as the glucose is in the filtered load is increasing, and as the transport is also increasing parallelly, so in the urine there will be no glucose. In the urine, the concentration of glucose is 0, or concentration of glucose is nil till this point. And when the glucose transport will no longer increase when the TG curve becomes flattened. That is the point. That is the point. Sorry. So initially the TG is 0. TG is 0. And when it reaches the plateau, it will slowly increase. It will slowly increase. It will slowly increase. So it will increase like this. After that, it will increase like this. So this black curve is curve of PGGFR. The blue curve is the curve of TG, and red curve is the curve of UGV. If I repeat once more, so the frame of reference is x-axis is plasma glucose level, and in the y-axis there are three attributes. The black curve is PGGFR. So as the PG is increasing, PGGFR is increasing linearly. As PG is increasing, TG is also increasing linearly till the saturation is reached, transport saturation is reached, then it becomes plateau. And as PG is increasing, UGV is also increasing. And when the transport is saturated, then the rest amount of increased amount of glucose will appear in the urine. So it will appear in the urine. Now with this backdrop, if we now return to again to the this titration, glucose titration curves, or the copybook picture of glucose titration curves here. So this glucose titration, so this is the classical glucose titration curves. The curve which I have drawn just now, that I have depicted here. Now there are several complications here. You see, for each set of factors, there are two curves. You see, one is blue curve, another is black curve. In this particular diagram, one is blue curve, another is black curve. And you see, this say for this transport phenomena, this blue curve is straight, continuous curve. This continuous curve when it is a bend. Here, the black curve is having a gradual bend. Gradual bend. See, the black curve is having a gradual bend. Here also, this black curve is having a gradual bend. Instead of a sharp bend, it is gradually bent. And this gradual bend is very important. Now, these blue curves here shown in this diagram, they are known as predicted curves or theoretical curves. Theoretical curves due to theoretical, based upon the theoretical values or theoretical curves. And black curve is the actual curves or practical curves. So blue curves are the theoretical curves and black curves are the practically observed in real time, in reality what is happening. See, so you can very clearly see that if this is the point of saturation, this is the point of saturation, or this is the point of transport Tx, if this is the level of transport where saturation is achieved in theoretical situation, practically it is a bit earlier or much earlier. So if this is the point of saturation achieved, say it is a 2 millimole per ml level, in reality it is achieved much earlier. Or if this is the point of urinary level, or point of it is the point of plasma glucose where glucose appears in the urine. If this is the plasma level where glucose appears in the urine, as per theoretical prediction is concerned, this is the actual plasma level where in reality glucose appears in the urine. So these blue curves are theoretically predicted curves, and black curves are the actual curves obtained in real life or real experimental situation. Real experimental situation. So blue curves are the theoretically predicted curves, and black curves here are real curves in practical situation or real situation. So there is a difference between theoretically predicted values and practical values, practical or real values. Why it is so, we shall discuss. So if we understand this tubular, if we repeat this tubular handling of glucose, or if you try to understand a bit detail, so this is the Nephron equation. Now till PGGFR is equal to TG as long as the amount of filtered load of glucose is equal to the transport of glucose, or in other words, transport of glucose or reabsorption of glucose is equal to the filtered load of glucose. That means whatever amount of glucose is filtered is reabsorbed in totality. Till then, UGV of glucose is 0, or urinary load of glucose is 0. Now, when PGGFR is more than Tmax G, that means Tmax G means the maximum possible transport rate when it achieves the plateau. That plateau level is known as transport maximum of glucose. Now, when PGGFR is more than Tmax G, that means filtered load of glucose is more than the maximum transport ability of glucose of the tubule, then UGV will become positive, and some amount of glucose will appear in the urine, and that is a situation is known as glycosuria. That is a situation is known as glycosuria. So if we see, so at the point of transport saturation, if we try to calculate the Tmax G, so at the point of transport saturation, the TG is designated as Tmax G. At the point of transport saturation, the TG is designated as Tmax G, and this Tmax G is more or less fixed. For the tubule, for male, it is around 375 milligram per minute. Try to appreciate the unit. 375 milligram per minute. That means mass per unit time in male, and 307 milligram per minute in female. So this is the transport maximum for glucose. Please remember these values. Now at the point of transport saturation of the tubule, now let us calculate the plasma concentration of glucose. So when TMG of a male is 375 milligram per minute, what should be the PG? What should be the PG, or plasma glucose level, or at which plasma glucose level, at which increased plasma glucose level the transport maxima at the tubular level is achieved? At which plasma glucose level the transport maximization at the tubular level is achieved? So Tmax G, as I have told you, is equal to PGGFR. Or 375 milligram per minute is equal to PG multiplied by GFR is 125 ml per minute. So PG is 3 milligram per ml or 300 milligram per GL. So what does it mean? So when plasma glucose level is 300 milligram per deciliter or 300 milligram per 100 ml of plasma, when plasma glucose level is 300 milligram per 100 ml of plasma, at the tubule, the transport saturation is reached. TMG, transport maximization is reached, or transport saturation is reached. Right? So this PG where transport maximization at the tubular level, PG at the level of plasma in blood, and transport saturation or transport maximization is taking place in the tubule. that plasma level, that the plasma level at which this transport maximization is reached is usually 300 milligram per dl. Our normal plasma glucose level is around 100 milligram per dl, 100 milligram per dl. When it becomes 300 milligram per dl, then and then only the transport maximization is reached. So if we see, compare these two diagram side by side parallelly. So this is the glucose titration curve. So this is the point of transport maximization, and this point of transport maximization is around 300 milligram per dl, 300 milligram per dl. So this transport maximization where this is achieved, TMG, Tmax G is achieved, that is the plasma level, that is the 300 milligram per dl, and this is known as, this PG is known as PTHG, plasma threshold value for glucose. Plasma threshold value for glucose, or theoretically predicted threshold value for glucose. Now this theoretically predicted threshold value for glucose is 300 milligram per dl. These blue turn, but in reality is much earlier. You see, in reality it is much earlier. So real value is around 200 milligram per dl. I have not written here. Theoretically predicted value is 300 milligram per dl, but the actual value is much less. It is around 180 to 200 milligram per dl. 180 to 200 milligram per dl. So, as I have described, so there are a few attributes of the glucose titration curves. It reaches a transport maximum. There is plasma threshold value, as I have mentioned. There are theoretically or calculated values, and there are real or practically obtained values. And why it is so? Why these theoretical values and theoretically calculated values and practical real values are different? That reason is known as a phenomena known as a splay phenomena. That is a phenomena known as splay phenomena. So if you see the diagram again, instead of an abrupt turnover, abrupt transition, this gradual transition is known as splay phenomena. Now, what is the reason of this splay phenomena is not fully explained. But the probable reason is that all the nephrons, there are two probable hypotheses, not very substantiated, but there are two probable hypotheses. Number one, the nephron heterogeneity. That means all the nephrons do not have similar reabsorption ability. Some are having greater, some are having lesser. So in a particular material point of time, instead of an abrupt transition, there is a range of transition. Instead of an abrupt pinpoint value of transport saturation, instead of an abrupt pinpoint value of transport saturation, there is a range of values of transport saturation. That's why there is an every probability that it is a bit earlier. That is number one issue. Second issue is, whenever this transport is taking place, it is a carrier-mediated transport. It is a carrier-mediated transport. So a solute is binding with a carrier, and this solute carrier complex is transported out of the membrane, across the membrane. So solute is binding with carrier, forming a solute carrier complex. Then that SC complex is transported across the membrane. Now this binding of solute with carrier is following the laws of mass action, law of mass action. So law of mass action means solute plus carrier equal to is a bidirectional arrow. SC. So S plus C bidirectional arrow into SC. We can, if we just, I can, for your impression, if I write like that, suppose we can write like that, say, so I can write like that, I can write like that for your impression. Say this, this. See, and you can put a bidirectional arrow here. You can put a bidirectional arrow. So if you understand in terms of uh, uh, mass action, I have not written correctly. One point I missed. So I mean to say S plus C bidirectional arrow SC. That I mean to say. I am not. I cannot write properly. So S substrate plus C carrier bidirectional arrow SC substrate carrier complex. So as we say bidirectional, so as substrate carrier association is taking place, there is substrate carrier dissociation is also taking place. So as solute is associated with carrier, a substrate carrier complex is also continuously dissociated. So it is a bidirectional affair. So it is a bidirectional affair leading to some amount of free glucose is always present in the tubular lumen. So these are the possible explanation of play phenomena. These are the possible explanation of play phenomena. I understand these are quite complex. Please put your question. I will answer in the interactive session. Now, similar to this glucose titration card, we can obtain the PAH titration card. Just the difference is PAH is classically secreted. PAH is classically secreted. It is filtered and it is also added by secretion. So the cards are entirely of different types. Here, this is the filtered load of pH. Filtered load of pH. This is the transport, that means secretion, transport into the lumen. The secretory load of pH, and in addition, this is the transport of or urinary load of pH. So this is the urinary. So this is the filtered load, this is the secretory load, and in combination is the urinary load. It is increasing more and more. So you can this card, this is your home task. Just go through this card, pH titration card, and try to understand every bit of it. Let it be a home task for you to understand every bit of this pH titration card, just opposite to the glucose titration cards. So this is more or less the basic principles of tubular function. Basic principles or fundamental principles of tubular function. I took two candidate molecules, one is glucose, another is para-aminobutyric acid, and attempted to describe and justify the various aspects of tubular function. So that's all. Thank you. And just put your questions. Just put your questions. And in the next class, we shall take up some new chapters of this tubular physiology and try to proceed in our journey of renal function. Thank you. Thank you.